the first episode of this exclusive podcast series where we will be getting to know the people behind Sitecore. In this episode, we will be sitting down with Mark Can Aalst from the technical marketing team. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So, Mark, if you wouldn't mind, please introduce yourself for the community and tell us a bit about your story.
Sure. My name is Mark Can Aalst, and I am living in the Netherlands. I started my professional career working at an agency some 15 years ago, I think. At the time, I worked with Microsoft CMS, SharePoint, a lot of different tools at the time. At some moment, there was a CMS vendor selection project where we were evaluating different types of CMSs. And Sitecore actually was one that kind of was on the top of the list. And during the whole exercise of selecting all of those vendors and all came by to do demos, Sitecore made it, was our top CMS that we chose. That's when I started to do the official Sitecore training, back then given by, not people from Sitecore, but people they hired. And they gave us the training, and that's when I realized I really liked the software, and I wanted to specialize within Sitecore. So I told my boss there at that time that I wanted to exclusively work on Sitecore projects just to gain more knowledge and to do stuff. I also worked on an open source blog module, more or less as an educational project, something that I could spend some time on just learning different parts of Sitecore, as those parts I wasn't really using during my day-to-day job. This resulted in becoming an MVP back in 2010, I think, or 2009 somewhere. Really, at the time, the whole community, Sitecore itself was also very slim. I think there were like 150 people working for Sitecore at the time. The community was also, there were not that many people as there are these days. So there were like a handful of people doing blogging. I did as well. As said, I became an MVP. I did the open source blog module, the WeBlog module, and at some point, Alistair the Nice and Nick Wesserman joined me as well, and the three of us started to develop on that module. Then after some time, I left that agency. I worked for two other companies. One was doing geographical information systems on the web, and they used Sitecore as well. And at some point, they decided they wanted to abandon Sitecore, and they chose, I think, the Silverlight technology from Microsoft. And as many of you might know, that didn't really work that well. I then left that company, started to work for a different agency, which were both doing Sitecore and Umbraco. And as you can see, Sitecore is kind of the one constant in there in all those companies that I worked. And that's kind of my history upon becoming a Sitecore employee.
Nice. And Mark, what is your current role at Sitecore, and how did you get started?
I actually got started through Twitter, I think. At some point, the Dutch Sitecore office tweeted that they were looking for a new solution architect. And I remember that it was on a Friday, and I applied. I responded, and I applied, sent in my resume. And since I was already pretty known within Sitecore itself, and already had contact with Sitecore employees and also with Sitecore leadership at the time, I got hired, I think, the week after. Funny enough, it was also the moment that I got reunited with a former coworker, Peter Brinkman, with whom I worked at our first agency. And since Sitecore back then was way smaller, a solution architect, my role, you were wearing multiple hats. So the one day you were giving training to developers, then you were presenting to customers or new partners, or you were just fixing the printer. Like everything that had more or less had an electrical cord was kind of your responsibility. But then when Sitecore really started to grow, Peter was asked by co-founder Lars Nielsen to join him to establish a technical marketing department. And I think a few months later or so, I joined them. And we've always tried to advocate for developers within the company, trying to keep that sense of a community we had already as Sitecore started to grow. So I work as a senior technical evangelist in a team of really smart people led by Jason Sincere. And we really try to educate our community, getting the most out of the software. And at the same time, we also try to be that voice of the developer within the company itself. So as such, we are more and more becoming a developer relations, developer advocacy team, I think.
And what does a day in the life look like for you?
My days are never the same, and that's a good thing. I really like the change in activities and doing all sorts of stuff. So there's a lot of R&D involved, getting to know our product, our features before they're even getting released. Sometimes even before it's getting built, talking to product managers, but also doing R&D in the sense of how we can support our developer ecosystem. So, for example, right now, after all the acquisitions that we had, we are really working hard on our developer experience. So, not just the technical aspects of it, but also how do we present all that information that is available now in a streamlined or more unified view. So, those are the things that are keeping me busy today. And that could be with just doing research myself, talking to other people, looking in the industry itself. How do other companies do stuff? What are examples that we could learn from? Yeah, so as said, it is really on a day-to-day level, it is really different.
Yeah, sounds like you do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And what advice do you have for someone who's interested in becoming a technical evangelist?
I think becoming a technical evangelist or developer advocate for that matter, it really comes down to two key responsibilities. So speaking and listening. And the speaking part is something you could already start today, right? Share your knowledge, start blogging or create videos, record podcasts for that matter. There are all these channels that you can already leverage. Just speak from your experience. Um, as an evangelist, you need to be credible. You need to wrestle with the same real world problems just before anyone else gets those problems. And that's what I do. I try to look for those problems and try to learn from them and share what I've learned from them. So for example, with SXA, I started using internal versions to create example sites or use cases, and that made me deal with issues. Luckily, I was in a position to discuss them directly with product managers or developers just before the software gets released. And I gained a lot of knowledge that I try to share through my blog or through videos or whatsoever. So I think if you want to become a technical evangelist or advocate, you can already start by doing that today in your current job, for that matter. And then, whenever you see an opening somewhere or you want to apply to that opening, you can already refer people to all of the stuff that you have already been doing, been sharing. Because I think that's something that people are really looking for. Like how you're not all of a sudden going to be very outspoken, very public. It is something that grows over time. Even for myself, like 10 years ago, I could never imagine myself standing on stage and presenting for hundreds of people. It is really something that you learn over time on what is the best way of sharing that information.
Yeah, definitely. And what are some of your hobbies and how did you get into them?
That's something that really doesn't have that much to do with a life, which is really for me also an indicator that I really love my job. So I kind of do it outside of working hours as well. But I love getting outside. So once a week I play soccer with a group of people that were very good players back in the days, more or less, and now just love the game and just love to spend 90 minutes on a pitch and play it. But besides that, I also have a passion for running. So I try to get out there like 3 times a week, something for a run. There's a lot of nature around here where I live, and I really love running through the forest to clear my mind, just don't think about anything or listen to some podcasts. And another thing, and this is rather funny, I love building Lego models. I really did as a kid, but like 2 years ago, I presented at SuckCon London, I think, and the organization thanked us by giving us a Lego set of the London skyline, and this kind of sparked something inside of me. And ever since, I started to collect all the skylines and models of places that I actually visited. And when I got most of them, I could just continue with other interesting models. So yeah, that's another way to keep myself busy.
Awesome. And Mark, last question here. So if you wouldn't mind sharing your favorite quote with the Sitecore community.
My favorite quote. Yeah, that's something I kind of looked it up more or less. I don't really have a quote where I live by or whatsoever, but I did find like a suitable quote that kind of illustrates what I'm thinking, and that is it's a quote from Walt Disney, something that I really enjoy from the Disney franchise, but also the parks and stuff like that. And the quote is, "We keep moving forward opening new doors and doing new things because we're curious, and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. And I love it because it really describes my psycho journey so far. So as I said, like 10 years ago, I never imagined myself speaking in public or organizing events or do any of the things I do today. And I'm really a firm believer of learning by doing. And I think you can do a whole lot of things without even knowing actually how. When you start, you just start with it and then adjust.
Yes, definitely. Love that quote. So, Mark, thank you for sharing your story with us today and allowing the Sitecore community to get to know you better.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Really enjoyed it.
On our next episode, we will be getting to know Thomas Desmond from the technical marketing team as well. Until then, cultivate the community.